I had been in a relationship with Crystalby for 3 years, but we broke up over a minor misunderstanding. After moving into my newly rented apartment, I unexpectedly saw a familiar figure. The key turned in the lock. The door opened. Instead of the emptiness of a new home, I was greeted by the familiar scent of cabinet flowers and someone I never dreamed would be here. Crystalby. She was wearing a simple white t-shirt and jeans, her hair casually tied back, bending over to organize a half-open suitcase. Hearing the door open, she looked up and saw me, her expression instantly freezing. In those once watery almond eyes, shock and confusion flashed rapidly, followed by undisguised disgust and coldness. My brain buzzed as if struck hard by a heavy hammer, blood rushing to my head in an instant. How could it be her? What was she doing here? This was the woman who, 6 months ago, dragged her suitcase and tearfully told me, "Felix Fong, it's over between us." This ex-girlfriend I swore to never see again had actually appeared in the apartment I had just rented. "Felix Fong," she practically screamed, her voice brimming with disbelief and fury. "What are you doing here?" Still reeling from the shock, I instinctively shot back. "That's my line. This is the apartment I just rented." "You rented it?" She furrowed her brows, her eyes scrutinizing me with suspicion. Then she let out a cold laugh. "Ha, the landlady never mentioned I'd have a roommate." "Roommate?" The word stung, igniting a fire in my chest. "What roommate? This is supposed to be a whole unit rental." We stood there like two hedgehogs with their territories invaded, glaring at each other, the air thick with unspoken tension. Just then, my phone rang. It was the landlady. I answered the call, but before I could speak, the landlady's exuberant, booming voice came through the line. "Oh, Felix dear, so sorry about this, but I've got something to tell you. You see, about that apartment, that young lady, Xiao Bai, also had her eye on it. My memory's been a bit fuzzy, and I got mixed up, thinking you two were together." "Alright then, I see you young folks get along well. The apartment has 2 bedrooms and a living room. Just treat it as a shared rental. I'll give you a discount on the rent, and you can look out for each other." "Ah, it's settled then. I've got things to do, so I'll hang up now." Hey. Before I could even object, the call was ruthlessly disconnected. I stood there holding my phone, feeling like a fool who'd just been played a cruel trick by fate. Sharing an apartment with Crystalby? What kind of international joke is this? I glanced at Crystalby. Her face was even paler than mine, a sickly shade of gray. I managed to reply, my voice hoarse and strained. She didn't say a word, just glared at me fiercely, her eyes blazing with fury. Then she abruptly turned, grabbed her suitcase, and stormed out. "Wait!" I instinctively reached out to stop her. She halted and turned back, her gaze icy. "What do you want? Where are you going?" "Anywhere is better than being under the same roof as you." She spat through gritted teeth. "It's almost dark out, and you're a girl alone." I trailed off, realizing how absurd that sounded. "We've already broken up. What right do I have to care about her? Don't bother yourself with it." She cut me off coldly. "Even sleeping on the street would be better than seeing you." With that, she pulled the door open and walked out without looking back. With a loud slam, the door was thrown shut so hard the walls seemed to tremble. In the living room, only I remained, along with her suitcase that hadn't even been fully unpacked. The air still held the familiar scent of osmanthus flowers, and also the lingering traces of her undisguised disgust and hatred toward me. My heart felt as if something had wrenched it sharply, sour, bitter, and filled with an indescribable sense of grievance. Yes, I was the one who initiated the breakup back then, but was she completely blameless? If it weren't for her, forget it, it's all in the past. Now, arguing over who was right or wrong is pointless. We're already strangers. No, worse than strangers. We're exes who accidentally ended up as roommates. What the hell kind of situation is this? I thought Crystalby would really do as she said, preferring to sleep on the street rather than come back. But who would have thought? Half an hour later, she dragged her suitcase back, her face ashen with anger. Probably she hadn't found a suitable place to stay. Or after calming down, she felt there was no need to turn down a good deal over money. After all, at this price and in this location, it would be hard to find another place like this. Without even glancing at me, she walked straight to the door of the other room, took out the keys the landlord had likely given her to, opened the door, dragged her suitcase inside, and with a soft click, closed the door again. Throughout it all, she didn't spare me a single look or utter a word, as if I were just a ghost in the air. Well, it's for the best. Mutual non-interference is the ideal state. I quietly gathered my things and moved into the other room. 2 bedrooms, 1 living room, 1 kitchen, and 1 bathroom meant that aside from our own rooms, we'd be sharing all the common spaces. The kitchen, living room, and bathroom. The thought of having to see her day in and day out from now on, even possibly fighting over the bathroom, filled me with irritation. The first night of cohabitation passed without incident, or rather, in a deathly silence. I could clearly hear the sounds from the next room, her turning over in bed, her sighs. I knew she wasn't asleep either. We were like 2 hedgehogs trapped in the same cage, longing for warmth yet keeping our distance for fear of being pricked by each other. The next morning, the real test arrived. I was used to waking up early. After washing up, I was just about to head to the kitchen for a glass of water. As soon as I opened the door, I ran into Crystal Bai, who had just stepped out of the neighboring room. She was in her pajamas, her hair a mess, with a sleepy, dazed look on her face. Our eyes met, and the air instantly froze. She seemed equally surprised to see me so early, pausing for a moment. Then, a look of disgust crossed her face, and she abruptly turned to retreat back into her room. Wait, I called out to her. She turned back impatiently. What now? I gestured toward the bathroom. We need to set some ground rules. We can't have a bathroom showdown every morning, can we? She seemed to realize the issue too, frowning reluctantly as she replied, you go first. I'll use it from 7:00 to 7:30 a.m., and you can have it from 7:30 to 8:00 a.m. At night, I'll use it whenever I want. She cut me off. Just stick to your own schedule. Good. And one more thing, she added, in the kitchen and living room, unless absolutely necessary, don't be present at the same time. Keep your distance. I felt a bit annoyed, but still nodded 7 times, saying, alright, keep your things separate in the fridge. Don't touch each other's stuff. Got it? Utilities are split 50-50. I'll send you the bill when it comes. Alright. Finally, she looked at me, her gaze icy. Felix Fong, remember that our current relationship is just that of roommates sharing a place. Don't entertain any inappropriate thoughts or actions, or I'll move out immediately, even if it means paying the penalty fee. Every word she spoke seemed to draw a clear, insurmountable great divide between us. I know, she's warning me, and she's protecting herself, protecting that heart of hers that might not have fully healed yet. Don't worry. I tugged at the corner of my mouth, flashing what I thought was a dashing smile. I don't have any ideas about you either. After saying that, I turned and went back to my room, closing the door and leaning against it, my heart filled with bitterness. What kind of thought is that? Who am I kidding? If there really were no thoughts, why did my heart skip a beat just now when I saw her in her pajamas, looking drowsy and disheveled? Felix Fong, you really have no backbone. The roommate agreement between Crystal Bai and me was strictly adhered to in the first few days. We lived like strangers under the same roof, meticulously avoiding each other's schedules and shared spaces and doing our best not to cross paths. Even if we accidentally bumped into each other in the living room or hallway, we'd quickly avert our eyes or pass by with cold expressions, brushing shoulders without a word. The entire apartment was filled with a low-pressure, suffocating awkwardness. Yet some things are ingrained in one's bones, like habits. That morning, after I finished showering, I saw a cup of warm milk and 2 slices of toasted bread placed on the dining table. I froze for a moment, instinctively glancing toward Crystal Bai's tightly shut door. She must have prepared this for me, then forgotten to take it away. Yes, that had to be it. But she doesn't drink milk. She's lactose intolerant, something I knew from when we were together, and she never eats toast either. Complaining about the calories, this was clearly my old breakfast routine. My heart felt as if something had gently tapped it, a little sour, with an inexplicable flutter. She still remembered my habits, unconsciously, or perhaps, I didn't touch that breakfast, just stood there watching for a long time, then silently returned to my room. Another time, I was working on a manuscript in the living room at night and fell asleep without realizing it. Woken by the cold in the middle of the night, I found a thin blanket draped over me, not mine, with a faint scent of cabinet flowers. It was Crystal Bai's. When had she come out, and even covered me with a blanket? Looking at that blanket, my heart was a mix of emotions. What troubled me more was myself. I realized, I too, without thinking, had been doing some unnecessary things, like seeing her clothes blown off the balcony by the wind. I'd casually pick them up and rehang them, knowing she had to catch an early flight the next day. I'd leave the guest room light on for her in advance. When shopping at the supermarket, I'd unconsciously reach for that brand of yogurt she used to love the most, then silently put it back. These damn lingering habits, like fine, delicate vines, quietly creep and grow in the deliberately maintained distance between us, reminding us of that indelible past, and stirring up the embers of. I grew increasingly irritable. This blurred boundary, this tug-of-war between us, was driving me mad. Either cut it off completely, never see each other again, or, but now, we see each other constantly. How could we possibly sever it entirely? That night, in a foul mood, I was drinking river wine in the living room when Crystal Bai came out of her room, probably heading to the kitchen for water. Seeing me, she paused, then frowned. Felix Fong, I've said, I know. I cut her off, the alcohol fueling my temper, my tone sharp. Stay out of common areas unless necessary. Keep your distance. Fine. She probably didn't expect me to snap suddenly. She froze too. You, what's with me? I stared at her eyes, widened slightly in surprise. The anger that had been simmering inside me for so long could no longer be contained. Crystal Bai, can you stop pretending? Is this mutual torment really worth it? Do you think I don't know you covered me with a blanket? You can't let go. You never really let go, did you? My accusation struck Crystal Bai like a sharp blade, catching her off guard. The color drained from her face, Her lips trembled slightly, and she looked at me with eyes full of shock, embarrassment, and a hint of panic at having her secret exposed. You're talking nonsense, she instinctively retorted, but her voice lacked conviction. Nonsense? I sneered, emboldened by the alcohol. Then look me in the eyes and say it again. Tell me you don't care about me, about the past, at all. She stared at me, her lips parting slightly, but no words came out. In those eyes that were usually filled with stubbornness and coldness, a faint mist now gathered. I knew I had hit the mark. Just like me, she was trapped in this torturous ordeal called a breakup, struggling desperately with no way out. Felix Fong. After a long while, she finally found her voice again, hoarse and weary. Even if I haven't let go, what difference would it make? She raised her eyes to look at me, her gaze filled with a near-desperate sorrow. You were the one who brought up the breakup first. You were the one who didn't want me anymore. You told me I was too clingy, that I was suffocating you. You were the one who told me to get lost. Every word she spoke was like a small hammer, pounding mercilessly against my heart, hurting me so much I could barely breathe. Yes, it was me. Back then, it was me who used those most hurtful, coldest words to drive her away. But she didn't know that when I said those things, my heart ached even more than hers. She didn't know that my so-called suffocation wasn't because she was clingy, but because of myself. Because my career had hit rock bottom at the time. A complete failure. I was afraid of holding her back. Afraid I couldn't give her the future she wanted. Afraid to see the look of disappointment in her eyes if she had to suffer alongside me. I was so proud, yet so insecure. I felt I was no longer worthy of her. So, I chose to push her away in the cruelest way, thinking it was for her own good. But I never imagined this knife would not only wound her, it also hurts me to the point of being utterly broken. These words, these truths hidden for half a year, are right on the tip of my tongue, ready to burst out, but seeing the thick, unyielding sorrow and resentment in her eyes, I couldn't utter a single word. What's the use of telling her the truth now? It would only make me seem more ridiculous, more pathetic, more cowardly and weak, and would she even believe me? She'd probably just think I'm making excuses for my own scumbag behavior. I'm sorry, Crystal. In the end, I could only dryly utter these 3 words, my voice weak and powerless. Crystal Bai looked at me and suddenly laughed, a smile uglier than crying. Felix Fong, she said, your sorry is too cheap. With that, she stopped looking at me, turned, and walked back to her room, leaving me with a resolute and lonely silhouette. In the living room, only I remained, along with the sound of shattered hearts scattered all over the floor. I picked up the liquor bottle and took a fierce gulp. The pungent liquid burned my throat, and it burned my heart, already filled with regret and pain. Felix Fong. Oh Felix Fong, you really are a living book. That night's quarrel was like a brief storm. Afterward, the room fell into an even more suffocating dead silence. Between Crystal Bai and me, that already fragile facade of peace was completely torn apart. We no longer deliberately avoided each other, but our interactions grew colder than before, filled even more with silent confrontation. When our eyes met, it was no longer awkward evasion but a prickly indifference. In the air, an intangible smell of gunpowder lingered, as if it could erupt again at any moment. Yet, amidst this tense atmosphere, some subtle changes were quietly taking place. Perhaps that night's confrontation made us both shed some disguises. Perhaps the suppressed emotions needed an outlet. We began, in some inadvertent moments, to touch upon the softness deep within each other's hearts, the part we were unwilling to admit. Once, I was editing photos late at night in the living room when my stomach trouble suddenly flared up, the pain making me curl up on the sofa, cold sweat streaming down. The door to the next room suddenly opened, and Crystal Bai walked out. Seeing me in pain, she paused for a moment, then quickly approached, asking, "What's wrong?" She bent down, her tone tinged with urgency. "Stomachache," I said through gritted teeth. Without another word, she turned and went to the kitchen, soon returning with a glass of warm water. She then fetched stomach medicine from her own room and handed it to me. "Take this first, then go lie down in bed." Her tone carried an undeniable concern. Watching her busy figure and the worry she couldn't hide in her eyes, something inside me felt as if it had been scalded. Even though we were on such bad terms, even though she hated me, she couldn't help but care when I was sick. Another time, she was doing a live stream as a content creator. That night, she faced online harassment, attacked by some malicious trolls with extremely vicious language. After the live stream ended, she shut herself in her room and didn't come out for a long time. Feeling uneasy, I knocked on her door. There was no response. I tried turning the doorknob. It wasn't locked. I pushed the door open. I saw her sitting on the carpet, knees hugged to her chest, shoulders trembling as she wept silently. She looked like a small creature abandoned by the whole world, so fragile it broke my heart. In that moment, without thinking, I walked over and sat down beside her. I reached out and gently pulled her into my arms. Her body stiffened, instinctively trying to resist. "Don't move," I said, my voice hoarse. "Just cry. It'll make you feel better." Perhaps my embrace gave her a sense of safety, or perhaps she had been holding it in for too long and needed an outlet. she stopped struggling, leaned against my chest, and began to sob loudly, like a wronged child. I held her, gently patting her back, letting her tears soak my shirt. There wasn't a trace of improper thought in my mind, only overwhelming heartache. Crystal Bai, you fool, why do you have to bear everything alone? Why can't you rely on me, even just a little? That night, we didn't speak, just held each other quietly, drawing the meager warmth from one another as if only this could fend off the world's chill and loneliness. I knew the ice between us was slowly melting, the wall of separation quietly crumbling, but after it melts, after it crumbles, what awaits us? A fresh start, or deeper entanglements? I didn't know and dared not think. Since that night, the relationship between Crystal Bai and me entered a more delicate, more perilous phase. We no longer deliberately kept our distance or clashed head-on as before. We began trying to get along like ordinary roommates, though there was still some awkwardness, some unease. At least the air no longer hung thick with that suffocating tension. We'd occasionally bump into each other in the living room, nodding in greeting. She'd sometimes help collect my packages, and I'd open the door for her when she forgot her keys. In the kitchen fridge, our things remained clearly separated, but occasionally when she cooked too much, she'd knock on my door. Hey, there's still some in the pot. Want some? I'd also make her a cup of hot milk when she stayed up late writing, saying, don't overdo it. These seemingly trivial interactions were like tiny sparks, reigniting something in the long still lakes of our hearts. I knew we were both cautiously testing the waters, inching closer, like two wounded hedgehogs, wanting to embrace for warmth, yet afraid of being pricked by each other again. I found myself increasingly unable to control my attention toward her. What she wore today, what perfume she used, whether she was happy or not, every subtle expression of hers, every unconscious gesture, could easily stir my emotions. I knew this wasn't right. We had already broken up. I should have moved on completely, but I couldn't, especially when I saw her vulnerable side. She appeared strong and independent on the outside, but deep down, she was actually very sensitive and lacked a sense of security. She would feel upset for a long time over a single negative comment online. She would doubt herself over a minor setback at work, and late at night, she would sit alone on the balcony, gazing blankly at the city lights, her eyes filled with loneliness. Every time I saw her like this, my heart would ache, and I couldn't help but want to comfort her, to protect her, to tell her not to be afraid because I was here. And she seemed to have let down many of her defenses toward me, no longer harboring the same hostility and wariness she once did. She would occasionally vent to me about work frustrations. She would clumsily take care of me when I was sick, and she even began to show some of her girlish charm and dependence in front of me, just like before. Once, she interviewed for a very important collaboration opportunity but failed. When she returned, her mood was low, and seeing her forcing a smile with red-rimmed eyes left a sour taste in my heart. That evening, I happened to make her favorite sweet and sour ribs, and as she ate, tears began to fall. Felix, she choked out, am I really that useless? No. I shook my head, handing her a tissue. You're already amazing. One failure doesn't mean anything. But, there's no but, I interrupted her, looking into her eyes earnestly. Crystal Bai, in my heart, you've always been the most incredible. She stared at me, stunned, then her cheeks flushed slightly as she lowered her head in embarrassment. In that moment, seeing her rare shy expression, my heartbeat once again went out of control. I knew I was completely done for by this woman who, despite having already broken up, could still easily stir all my emotions. She was my weakness, the thorn I could never let go of. No matter what, I decided to stop running away, to stop tormenting each other. Some feelings, if you can't let them go, then face them bravely and fight for them, even if the outcome might not be ideal. At least I tried and left no regrets. I began to actively move closer to Crystal Bai, no longer testing the waters, but approaching with clear, purposeful intent. I would find all sorts of excuses to eat with her, watch movies together, do all the things couples do. I would send her favorite flowers, buy the little gifts she had been longing for. When she needed me, I would be there for her at the first moment, offering support and a shoulder to lean on. I would no longer hide my care and concern for her. I wanted her to know that my feelings for her were not just guilt and compensation, but more so a love that had been lost and found again. Crystal Bai was initially resistant and evasive toward my sudden, passionate advances. She was probably still afraid of repeating past mistakes, afraid of getting hurt again. She would deliberately put on a cold face and say hurtful things to push me away. Felix Fong, don't do this. We're already over. Your actions only make me think you're even more hypocritical. Put away your cheap sympathy. I don't need it. I knew she was saying one thing but meaning another. The more she spoke like this, the more it proved she actually cared deep down. So I didn't give up. Every time she pushed me away, I drew closer again. When she spoke coldly, I would warm her with my actions. I believe that as long as I am sincere enough and steadfast enough, one day, I can melt the icy barrier in her heart. A turning point came on a weekend, when the landlord suddenly called. He apologized, saying he planned to sell the house and asked us to move out as soon as possible. This news was like a stone thrown into a lake, shattering the fragile balance we had painstakingly built between us. Move out? Where to? Could we continue living together like this? Or would we go our separate ways, returning to our own worlds once again? Watching Crystal by silently start packing her things, my heart instantly panicked. No, I couldn't let her leave again. This time, I absolutely couldn't let go. At the moment she was dragging her suitcase, ready to leave, I finally mustered all my courage, rushed forward, and tightly embraced her from behind. Don't go. My voice trembled with emotion, my arms slightly numb from the force. Crystal bye. Don't leave again. Her body stiffened, and she stopped in her tracks, neither struggling nor turning around. Felix Fong. Her voice carried a hint of weariness and an almost imperceptible tremor. Let go. We're not right for each other. No. I stubbornly shook my head, holding her even tighter. What's not right? Tell me and I'll change it. It's not your fault. She sighed softly. It's me. I'm scared. She paused, her voice choked, afraid that we'll end up just like before, and in the end, we'll still part ways. Hearing her words, my heart felt as if it had been wrenched hard. So she was just as afraid of repeating the past as I was. It won't happen. I looked at her back, word by word, solemnly promising, this time I won't let go again. In the past, I was a jerk. I was cowardly. I hurt you in the stupidest way. But please believe me, I'm not the same Felix Fong from 3 years ago anymore. I know I was wrong, and I know what I truly want now. I want you, Crystal bye. I turned her body around, forcing her to look into my eyes, my gaze burning and resolute. I love you, from beginning to end. The only person I've ever loved is you. The breakup 3 years ago wasn't because you were clingy, or because I stopped loving you. It was because I fucking felt I wasn't good enough for you. I was afraid I couldn't make you happy. I was afraid. Incoherently, I roared out all the truths I'd hidden for 3 years. Crystal bye stared at me in shock, tears still on her face, her eyes filled with disbelief, astonishment, and a faint, rekindled glimmer of hope. Is what you said true? She asked, her voice trembling. It's true. I nodded firmly. Every word is true. That letter. I suddenly remembered something. I wrote a letter back then, wanting to explain to you, but in the end, I still didn't have the courage to send it. That letter has been buried at the bottom of my suitcase ever since. A letter? She froze for a moment, then seemed to recall something. She abruptly broke free from my embrace and rushed back to her room. A moment later, she ran out holding a slightly yellowed envelope. Is this it? She handed me the envelope, her fingers trembling. I looked at that familiar envelope. The handwriting on it was unmistakably mine. How could this letter be with her? Could it be that back then, when I was sorting through old things, I did indeed buy this letter? Then I casually tucked it into a book, and that book was later borrowed by her. With trembling hands, I took the envelope and opened it. Inside was the confession and apology I had mustered all my courage to write back then, but ultimately never sent. The youthful pride, the inferiority in the face of hardship, the fear of losing her, and that deep-seated, never-changing love. Crystal bye looked at the letter in my hand, then at the turbulent emotions in my eyes. Tears welled up again, but this time, it was no longer sorrow or resentment. It was relief, grievance, an indescribable, complex mix of feelings. So you, she choked, her voice faltering, you never looked down on me. No. I shook my head firmly, holding her tightly in my arms, kissing her hair and forehead over and over. Never. The one I looked down on was myself, this useless coward. She wept openly in my arms, pouring out all the grievances, misunderstandings, and pain she had bottled up over the past 3 years. I held her tightly, letting her tears soak through my chest. My heart was filled with the relief of having her back and deep regret for the past. If we had been honest with each other just a little earlier, would we have missed these 3 years? Would we have suffered so much less? But there are no what-ifs. Fortunately, it wasn't too late. After she had cried her fill, her emotions gradually settled. I cupped her tear-swollen face, looked into her still clear eyes, and said earnestly, Crystal bye, give me another chance. This time, I won't let go. I'll spend the rest of my life making up for the time we lost. I'll strive to become worthy of you. She looked at me, tears glistening in her eyes, but a faint smile slowly bloomed on her face, bright and moving, like a rainbow after the rain. She reached out, gently stroking my cheek, her voice nasal yet resolute. Felix Fong, she said, actually, you've always been worthy, you just never knew it. The most important lesson in life is learning to let go, isn't it? She paused, then leaned in, pressing a gentle kiss to my lips, one that tasted of salty tears. So this time, it's my turn to say it. Don't leave again. Seeing the familiar mischief and tenderness in her eyes, my heart warmed. I lowered my head and kissed her fiercely once more. This time, there was no hesitation, no pulling away, no pain or misunderstandings, only the overwhelming joy of having her back, and a love for each other that held nothing back. The first thing Crystal bye and I did after getting back together was look for a place to live. Since our old landlord was selling, we decided to search together for a home that truly belonged to both of us. This time, it wasn't a coincidence or a shared rental. It was a proper, intentional move-in together. House hunting was full of fun, though not without its little disagreements. She loved a big south-facing balcony. I preferred a quiet study. She favored a minimalist Scandinavian style, while I leaned toward a retro industrial look. Like any ordinary couple, we'd argue over small things, compromise, and, in the process, discover even more wonderful things about each other. In the end, we settled on a place that wasn't large but was cozy, with a spacious balcony for sunbathing and a small study where I could quietly edit photos. We each compromised on the decor, opting for an eclectic mix. On moving day, the sunlight was brilliant as I watched Crystal by bustling around the apartment, directing the movers. Her face beamed with a happy smile, and my heart was filled with an unprecedented sense of stability and contentment. This must be what home feels like, a place where she is. We started dating again, as if trying to make up for the 3 lost years with double the intensity. We would hold hands and go shopping like any ordinary couple, watch movies, eat at street stalls. She would accompany me on photo shoots, watching as I raised my camera to capture fleeting moments of light and shadow. I would also join her at various content creator events, listening to her confidently share her insights and creative ideas. We were no longer the proud yet insecure Felix Fong or the stubborn, grudge-holding Crystal Bai of the past. We've both quietly grown through these missed moments, becoming better versions of ourselves, and learning how to love each other more deeply. Of course, we still occasionally think back to the past, to those days when we tormented and hurt one another, but those scars no longer ache. Instead, they've become a unique kind of playful intimacy between us. For instance, she'll deliberately put on a stern face, imitating my old self, and say, "Crystal Bai, you're too clingy, it's suffocating me." Then, before I can retort, she'll throw herself into my arms, laughing like a cat that's stolen the cream. And when she occasionally acts unreasonably or idle, I'll tease her on purpose, saying, "What, trying to lock me out again?" Then, before she can punch me in flustered annoyance, I'll pull her into a tight embrace. We both know the past can't be erased, but we can choose to cover those wounds with love and tenderness, and walk hand in hand toward a brighter future. A year later, my photography studio was on track, gaining a small reputation in the industry. Crystal Bai's career as a content creator was thriving, and she had become a quite influential influencer. We each had our own careers, and together we shared a warm home. It was Crystal Bai's birthday. I finished work early, decorated the house, prepared her favorite dishes and a cake, and gave her a huge surprise when she returned. Seeing the candles and flowers filling the room, her eyes welled up again. "Felix, you." I took out a velvet box from behind me, knelt on one knee before her, and said, Crystal Bai." Watching the tears glistening in her eyes and that unmistakable happiness, my heart pounded like a drum, but my voice was unwavering. 3 years ago, I owed you a promise. Now I want to make it right, even if it's 3 years late. I opened the box, revealing a simple yet dazzling diamond ring inside. "Crystal Bai, will you marry me? This time, let me be the one to stick by you for a lifetime." She looked at me, tears streaming down once more, but this time, it was joy, not sorrow. Covering her mouth, she nodded vigorously, choked up and unable to speak. I gently slid the ring onto the ring finger of her left hand. It fit perfectly. I stood up and embraced her in my arms. Outside the window, the night was gentle and the stars shone brilliantly, while inside, the candlelight flickered, casting the shadows of our tightly entwined figures. I knew that this ring was not just a promise, but the best testament to our love, lost and found again, and a fresh new starting point for us to walk hand in hand into the rest of our lives. 3 years ago, I rented a place with 7 rooms, and my roommate turned out to be my ex. 3 years later, I finally turned my ex into the rest of my life. Fate sometimes twists and turns, full of ups and downs, but as long as there is love in your heart and you never give up, you will eventually find the right person, and together, slowly walk the remaining path.